Welcome to the family with
Andy Brant Bernard on the Tom Bernard Show.
And Kristyn Bird on the Tom Bernard Show.
Yeah, because we don't have Catherine today. She's got some,
we don't.
I don't even know what it is. Alex has got something I know with the kids, so she couldn't be on today.
I think Jude needs to be blow dried.
That's what it is. Yeah, no question about it. But Kristyn Bird's with us, and Jesse the Shrink will join us for the second half, which is good. Yep. You ever talk to him, Kristyn?
Yeah, I've been on the show with him at the same time. Maybe so, twice, maybe 3 times. Yeah.
I think 2 months ago or a month and a half or something like that.
Yeah, he's been on recently.
Indeed. It's interesting having a psychologist who's actually a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I know that we've done like pop culture takes on things, you know, when there's like some big story brewing, and I know he's given his 2 cents on it. It's been
he was here when we were talking about the Gene Hackman case was just breaking.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, gosh, you guys, they released photos of the interior of their home.
I gotta look these up, huh?
Yeah, look them up because it is hoarders territory. It was really sad.
You mean like it's filthy?
Yeah, it's really crap everywhere.
Really cluttered. Like they obviously needed help. They needed maybe a character in there. And I understand, you know, she was 65, she was young, but she probably was overwhelmed taking care of someone with Alzheimer's.
No, wasn't he was worth a lot of money, wasn't he?
I think I want to say about 45 million or something like that when he passed away.
You don't hire anybody to take care of it?
Sometimes people don't. People get, just watching my uncle take care of my aunt who had early onset Alzheimer's. She's in a memory care facility now, but, watching him take care of her and then through the pandemic, it is a struggle. It is a struggle. And then sometimes people don't want help and then they do want help. I wish people had more help just in general, more services, more support services were available. Yeah. It's tough.
That is a weird deal. As you know, I've talked about this before to you. I think the fact that when I was 7 years old, they came and got my father and put him in a straitjacket and took him to a mental institution, and it was like that was pretty interesting to watch that. Mm-hmm. But my favorite part of that whole thing was I believe all 7 again. Maybe my brother Terry was already in the Marine Corps. No. Well, maybe he was, though. He might have been already in the Marine Corps. Might have been in Vietnam or something. I don't know. But we were all lined up while they were taking him out the back door in a straitjacket, and he's flopping around and screaming and yelling and blah, blah, blah. He's like spitting, and it's just really an interesting setup. And as they go by, they take him out the door. And my oldest sister, I have 2 sisters, Vicky and Bobby. Bobby's the oldest. They take him out the door, and Bobby looks down at me and goes, "Tommy, I think they think our dad is nuts." You have to get a laugh out of it. Otherwise, it's too sad.
Yeah, you need humor in such a traumatic situation. And sometimes that's the only thing that gets you through. My mom always tells a story when my grandfather died, which was her father. They were calling people out of a phone book, out of my grandfather's personal
phone book, yeah,
to let them know that their friend had died or whatever. And they called someone who was obviously maybe deaf or just couldn't hear well. And they were like, we're calling to let you know that, Marcel died. And they're like, what? And they're like, Marcel. Well, what's up with Marcel? He's dead. Like they were screaming. But they said it just got to the point where they're screaming like how he had died and that he was dead. And just in the moment of like such trauma and sadness, they were crying tears of laughter because, it's just, you need those moments to cut the tension.
Well, you do. I mean, and you have to learn something from that situation too. Watching him take my father away in a straitjacket, I just decided that at that time, at 7 years old, that I was not going to go nuts. I just decided that I'm not going to go off the deep end because
I shall not let it happen.
I shall not let it happen to me. But then you do think about, well, is this hereditary? Will I have to go through something like this with my father? With the fact that my father, just before, about 2 weeks before they took him away, we lived in a 3-story house and by the way, it wasn't a mansion; it was a house.
3 stories,
in 3 stories in North Minneapolis. So, about 2-3 weeks before they hauled him off, I was thirsty, and I slept on the 3rd floor, which is basically the attic, but they opened it up with a staircase and the whole deal. So I was thirsty. So I went down, and it was dark as hell in the house, really, really dark. So I got down to the 2nd floor. Then I go down to the 1st floor. Then I walk in the kitchen, and it's dark as hell in there, and I can't hear anything. We didn't have cats or dogs or any of that stuff. I opened the refrigerator, and there was my father sitting there staring at me. But I don't think he was I thought he was staring at me, but I don't think he was staring at me. He had this stare in his eyes, but he didn't see anything. Because I talked to him and he didn't react at all. I mean, he didn't even look at me. He was looking at me anyway by coincidence, I suppose. But, you go through stuff like that. And the positive thing that did for me is I am scared of nothing, because that was so terrifying. Those 2 incidents, him being there staring into the abyss or whatever it was, and then being hauled away screaming and spitting and yelling in a straitjacket and on the gurney and all that stuff. I basically am afraid of nothing because of that. That threw the biggest scare in me of all time, and I realized nothing will ever be this bad again, so I'm scared of nothing. I have fears about my family and all the rest of it, and I make sure I get very touchy about that, my family and friends. But don't you think it's a good thing if you learn something from situations like that, don't you think?
Oh, I absolutely think so. I think I come from a family of big drinkers. And I think,
Oh, did you?
seeing some of their struggles, seeing some of the
Yep.
alcoholics in my family but my mom also would point it out. Like, if you're dating someone, watch how much they drink. You're
Yeah.
used to being around people that drink a lot, and it's normal. Even though it's not normal, but it's been normalized to you at family parties and things like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my husband and I barely drink. I mean, we barely drink. It's
I didn't even
it's
know you were
crazy.
Irish.
we're French Catholic. I think French Catholic
Okay, well,
side is
Catholic's
little-
close enough.
Yeah.
There were a few drinkers when I was at Catholic school, St. Joe's and St. Anne's. Matter of fact, the biggest drinkers of all were the ushers on Sunday Mass. Honest to God, you'd see them going into the bar on Friday and Saturday night, then they'd be in the ushers at church the next day. That was something else. Kristyn Britt, Entertainment News, brought to you by North American Banking Company. Go to nabanco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. So what's new in your world, sister?
We didn't talk about this, and I've been dying to talk about this because I think that I like to make predictions because I like to see if they ever come true, and we'll have to wait
Right.
a while to see if it comes true. But the Oscars, they're adding categories of areas of the internet, or areas of the entertainment industry, I should say, that have been neglected. We're getting a casting director category coming for 2026, but in 2027, we're getting a stunt category for best stunt performance.
Stunt category?
Stunts, yes, which is
Okay.
recognized. Like SAG Awards has stunts and things like that.
Oh, really? I didn't
And
know that.
Ryan Gosling was a big proponent for getting this done when he did Fall Guy.
Okay.
He's like, I'm not going to be one of those actors that says, I do my own stunts. He goes, I did none of my own stunts. This is the
Right.
team behind me that
Right.
did it. And because of his campaigning, he got the stunt category approved for 2027. It'll be the 100th anniversary of the Academy Awards. But this is my prediction, because this has nothing to do with the actual Oscars per se, but it's about the ego of
Okay.
someone who claims that they do all of their own stunts all the time
Right.
and does not have an Oscar. What actor would that be?
God. I
Does
bet you
all
I
of his
know.
stunts, but doesn't have an Oscar?
Does not have an Oscar. Does a ton of action movies and always tries to do the daredevil.
Betty White.
Yes, exactly. It is Betty White from the grave.
I knew it.
That's a good guess.
I know your listeners right now are screaming this name out because they know exactly who it is. It
Matt
is
Damon.
nope.
I was
We're
thinking it would be
older.
Tom, what's his name?
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, Tom Cruise. Yeah.
Wow,
He has
really?
He's been nominated a few times,
Huh.
but he does not have an Oscar. It is probably one of the last boxes he hasn't checked off in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that they are finagling behind the scenes, because we've got Mission Impossible this summer. So that's the end of that. He's behind the scenes thinking like, what can I get that can come out the summer of 2026 as fast as possible so I can get that first Oscar?
Yeah, I got that. It is kind of interesting that because his movies do sell well. They make a lot of money in general. Some haven't.
Yeah.
But most of
Yeah,
them
like
do.
I know he's famous for doing his own stunts, but I thought for sure he must have an Oscar, so I didn't say it.
Yeah, he does not have an Oscar. So,
Interesting.
and he's pivoted his career too. We have to remember he started off kind of like as that teen actor, doing like the Top Guns and the Outsiders, those type of movies. And then mid-career, he really went for that Oscar. When you have like a Jerry Maguire, you look at Tropic Thunder, you look at Rain Man, who he was working with. But then all of a sudden he took a random pivot. And I think because maybe Scientology got murky there.
Yeah.
And he just had to go back to being like the popular actor to gain his fan base back. And that's when we saw all the Mission Impossibles. That's when we saw, obviously Top Gun come back with Maverick. So I think that he is going to try at least one more time and maybe try and get that first stunt Oscar.
Well, I could see that. I don't know. What show was that where he was hopping around on a couch like a nut job? What was that again?
That was Oprah Winfrey. That was the Oprah Winfrey show. And he at the time had just started dating Katie Holmes, which was, at the time she was an actress who had just left Dawson's Creek, again, a teen drama on the WB. And then randomly they're suddenly dating and then engaged and then having a baby. That was the weirdest trajectory. And that was the time when he was jumping on the couch saying how in love he was.
Right. I remember that. Andy can't hear me. He doesn't have his headphones on. Andy, why don't we take a break here and just tell Jesse to hop on with us?
That was my idea.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a break. Be right back in a couple of minutes. Jesse the Shrink will join us because when you have Kristyn Burtt, you need a shrink. There's no question about it. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes right after this. From Bradshaw and Bryant, Michael Bryant. What's up, Allie?
Oh, not much. Doing my usual thing of telling people they shouldn't be texting and driving. In Minnesota, you can't have your phone in your hands. You can use, hands-free, but you can't have your phone in your hand for whatever reason. And that's why they made the law the way they did, so that police officers could see a phone in your hand and you got no excuse for why you got it there.
Do people know that that's the law?
I hope so. I mean, they used to follow it, and then kind of COVID kind of made people forget. And now it's like a freewheeling world out there with cell phones.
Let's say you get pulled over because you do have a phone in your hand and you're not watching where you're going. You got to be in pretty big trouble then, I would guess.
Well, the first one's not as bad. It's the multiple ones, the problem. And once people start stacking them up, then they have a big problem. And then what we're doing in car accidents is we've started bringing motions for punitive damages, because I'm trying to use the civil law any way we can to stop this, because it needs to stop.
Whenever I'd had any problems in my life, who was that I called again? It was like an MB, something like that.
Bradshaw and Bryant.
I always forget the button so far away from me now that I forget to punch the button. I'll learn one of these days. Let me tell you about my bank. That'd be North American Banking Company. When it comes to banking, it's all about trust, and that's what you get with them. They've been around since 1998. They've always made it clear they're here to give you a better banking experience with a focus on local community. As you know, it's my personal bank, so I know exactly what they're talking about. And you won't be dealing with some AI chatbot. You'll get straight answers and quick decisions from real people that know you and your situation, and they're always ready to help. So if you're tired of the big national banks and want something better, stop by and see my friends at North American Banking Company. Visit nabanco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Kristyn Burtt Entertainment News brought to you by North American Banking Company. Go to nabanco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. So basically what the situation was, because Alex couldn't be on today because she has family duties. Catherine can't be on today because she's having some beauty treatment or something.
Nails.
I love that. Very attractive women are the ones who get the most beauty treatments, and they're the ones who don't need them. I don't get that.
Sometimes it's just for yourself, though, to make yourself feel good.
So that's what. So
not for the male gaze all the time. It's not always for the men.
No, I'm not saying it should always be for the men, but it's like, we've talked about this before. You're a very attractive woman. Catherine is as well. And I just, is there a certain duty you have to maintain things? Is that what it's all about?
I do for my job. Yes, absolutely.
I suppose that's for your job. That would make sense.
Hair and makeup. I don't always have my nails done, but if I have a job where it's required, where I know my hands are going to show, I'll definitely have my nails done for sure.
Right. No, I could understand that. So I can't get away from the fact that this whole situation with the death and the 65-year-old wife and the 90-year-old husband, and it's just a very, very sad story. And every time we get new news, it gets even sadder because their house was a complete disaster, it sounds like.
It really was. And obviously it was one woman probably carrying the burden of all
Yeah.
of this because he
Yep.
was, 95, I believe. And
95.
he did not have a great relationship with the kids. And,
Right.
that's the other thing. So the kids weren't really checking in on them as much as maybe they should have been, or maybe, the damage was done to their relationship and they
Yeah.
didn't want to. There's that too. So we
That's
don't really
very
know.
tough. I just always loved him. I thought he was a terrific actor. And, Scarecrow, I talk about that movie quite often when I talk about Gene Hackman, because he and Al Pacino just killed it in that movie. It was just, and let's not forget, when I went and saw that movie downtown Minneapolis, there was a guy in the back, a hobo, a bum, whatever you want to call him. He snuck in through the side door to get in the theater, and he was drunk as hell. And through the entire last 15 minutes of that movie, he's screaming at this, "The guy's dead. Can't you see that he's dead, you dumb bastard?" And he's just screaming at the screen. I thought, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And you have to be screaming at the screen, do you?
Of course he does, because you're there in the theater, and if there aren't screamers or people on their cell phone.
Yeah. Well, that is a Florida thing. I will tell you that. If there's a woman 25 or under, they will definitely be on their phone during a movie in Florida.
It's crazy to me because movies are, say, $20, and if you buy snacks,
Yeah.
it's a lot more than that. And the last thing I want to do is waste all of that money. It's nuts.
Yeah.
We don't have the cell phone problem that much in Los Angeles, which is
Thank
good.
God.
But it is one of those situations. If I'm paying for a ticket, and I have the luxury of not paying for a lot of tickets because of my job, I get a lot of free movies, but you certainly don't want to be wasting your money and go, $20 down the
it's
drain
true.
while I'm on the phone watching TikTok.
Kath, I'm telling you, no question about it. Kristyn Bird Entertainment News brought to you by North American Banking Company. Go to nabankco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. And I can't remember who it was yesterday. It was either Gail King or Jesse, the shrink, that said, I was not a passenger. I was a crew member on that flight. Was that you or was that her?
That was me.
It was you. I thought it was you.
That was a
no question.
crazy flight. I couldn't believe how fast it went.
Was it like 8 minutes or something?
11.
11 minutes.
Felt like 10
But
seconds.
it was 11 minutes or 10 and a half if you actually go by the clock that they had from ground to the little trip that they took back down to the ground. I mean, it wasn't like they were in space for 11 minutes.
How long were they in space for? Wasn't it like 3 minutes or something?
3 to 5. We'll put 3 to 5 as an accurate estimate on that.
Let's see. Yeah, the whole thing was 11 minutes, but how much was it actually in space?
Probably not more than 3 minutes, I would guess.
Apparently, we don't know for sure.
Enough
they
time
don't.
for Katy Perry to drop her set list on a butterfly for her upcoming tour. Then she was like sniffing a daisy, which her daughter's name is Daisy. So I think that was her daughter's tribute. And then a couple of them are upside down. There were a few screams. Supposedly Katy Perry sang "What a Wonderful World." I mean, is SNL live this week? Because if SNL has a fresh show, I am praying that this is mocked endlessly. And Gail King is fighting for her life. I don't know if people have seen some of the interviews in the last day or so. She's like, I can't believe the criticism. We're getting girls into STEM. I'm an astronaut. And I'm like, you did not.
I'm an astronaut. Oh, okay. You're an astronaut.
When I think of NASA trained astronauts, I think of people, because usually each astronaut has an experiment or some research that they're doing that then goes into space, and then they come back with all of the evidence. What sort of experiment did you do in 3 minutes other than a selfie?
Well, you have to remember they were not passengers. They were crew members on that flight. They demanded that people understand that.
Like she thinks it's offensive if you call it a ride. And I was like, it was a space ride. It was like a very expensive Walt Disney World ride.
What has now? This is a perfect time for Jesse to hop in here. Jesse, why are people so incredibly arrogant and everything's about me now? Everything in the world, me. What happened?
I mean, look at the four of us sitting in front of these screens right now.
Look how important we are. I forgot.
People that love all the attention. I just don't understand. They want people to tune in. They feel like they're interesting to talk about all these things.
They want to listen to me talk. I know, right?
But I don't sit here and say, oh, I'm not just a podcast host. I invented radio long before I was even born. I mean, shut up. It drives me nuts. Everybody wants to take this credit for this, that, the other. Good. You got to go up for 10 minutes and 45 seconds. I'm happy for you. That's great news. But I mean, particularly, as I said, 35 and under got this attitude now that they're very, very important. Is that being taught in school or something?
Isn't it the culture they kind of grown up
Oh,
in? I mean, we're not there.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
there to live that culture necessarily, but isn't that the culture they live in? We didn't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
We didn't
you're
have
right.
we didn't have the constant attention. We didn't have the social media. We
Mhm.
didn't have, oh my God, I gotta go viral in this
Good
way.
point.
A whole different ball game.
But then you have a Kristyn Bird who has been, how many hours of your life have you been on national television screens everywhere and all the rest of it?
I don't
A
even want
ton.
to count. A lot, yeah.
And you're not some pain in the ass. Well, sometimes.
Well, I think
yeah.
it's about how you're raised for most people, but I
Yeah,
think for
probably.
people like Katy Perry, it's about the fact that, I mean, she objectively has tens of millions of people who worship her. She's basically the head of her own cult at this point.
Yeah,
You know,
I
whether
guess.
she likes it or not, and that's going to affect someone and make
Right.
them think like, oh, I must be very important, because I mean, in an objective sense, she is very important to a lot of people.
Yeah, I suppose.
And I
suppose
wonder
that's true.
I wonder for like people like Katie, how much, as she gets more into this in her life and she gets all this attention, how much does she still crave that attention? Does she want that attention? How much does she have a team of people that are saying, hey, you need to make sure that you're putting yourself out there and that you're doing
Yeah.
these things? And then another thing I wonder is, if for those of us who are a little bit older, if we go back to when we were younger, how many of us maybe dreamed about that lifestyle, but was that really accessible back then?
No, it was not. Well, maybe we did. No,
You didn't?
I
relate with that?
well, obviously, I got into radio, so I wanted somebody to pay attention to me. I guess there's very hard evidence.
Different kind of fame, though.
It's a different kind of fame.
I mean,
yeah,
like
no
when I
question about
started
it.
talking to like famous people, because like, you know, they'd be on KQ or whatever, they'd be in
Uh-huh.
town, and we go out to dinner with them every so often,
Right.
whatever. Or like, especially when we started doing the podcast and I started talking to them directly for, you know, extended periods of time, that really made me be like, I really do not want that. They're
Yeah, I
talking
can
about,
understand
like, how
that.
they can't go to the grocery store without people
Right.
noticing them and whispering. And it's like, oh, is that guy? Oh, yeah, it is that guy. Can't go out to a restaurant without the server trying to give them a screenplay or whatever. It's like,
Your kids get no privacy. You do not want
Right.
fame. I
No.
do not know
Right.
how to tell people
Yep.
this enough. You do not want fame. And living in Hollywood for as long as I have, or in the Los Angeles area, you don't want it. It is awful and uncomfortable. And the fact that the simple pleasures of like even just going to a mall, even though we're not like, oh, let's go to the mall now in 2025, the fact
Right.
that you cannot do that any longer is kind of miserable.
well, actually,
Well,
that's
yeah.
coming back, courtesy of Ethan. All he
Oh,
wants
is
to
that
do
right?
is go to the mall and just walk around and look at all the stuff. He likes to go to the Eden Prairie Mall. He likes to go to Shields.
Oh, let's go to Shields. Okay. Well, he's what, 3? He'll be 4 in November, right?
Single-handedly saving the retail industry during a
Yes.
recession.
Oh, yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, just I left home to go to work, and Melissa called me, and in the background, he's talking about how he wants to go to the mall and go on the little like moon jump thing that they have there.
Mhm, right.
He's just like, yeah, let's go to the mall. So I don't know. Maybe the mall hangout thing will be back. And when I do go to the Eden Prairie Mall, there are a lot of people there and a lot of younger people.
Oh, yeah.
Too. So I don't know, but I don't think it's like how it used to be, where you just spend 8 hours a day there just hanging.
My mom would drop me off for the day with
Oh,
my
really?
friends on a Saturday,
Really?
and we would like just go shopping and go to the food court. It was really fun, and you would never get into trouble either. It was just a safe environment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I
where
could see that.
the employees were smoking cigarettes.
Well, of course.
Did you guys have that back in the
Oh,
day?
yeah. Oh,
I don't
yeah.
remember that.
Going to the mall, we would go to the video arcade, and it would be filled with smoke,
Yep.
and it was the employee behind the counter smoking.
Oh, that's funny.
You
Well,
didn't have
everyone
that.
smoked everywhere in the 80s, like literally everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
One of my favorite tweets is that people under the age of 30 don't understand this, but the entire world used to smell like smoke.
It did. Absolutely.
Go
It
into
did.
someone's car, smells like smoke. Go to a
Yep.
mall, smells like smoke. Movie theater,
Oh.
somehow
True.
smells like smoke.
And don't you wonder now, because that smell is so distinct now?
Yeah,
I got to do that. I got to go and rewind and go, how did we not go everywhere and
Right.
go, oh God, that just stinks.
no,
But
you just go nose
It
blind.
gives me a headache right away if I smell it. It's
It makes me nostalgic.
I did think of one thing, Tom, if we go back just a moment. I don't know if I mentioned this on a previous episode or not, but I remember reading about how there was this research when it comes to people now wanting all this attention, younger people especially.
Yes, right.
Is it ties into the world of psychology and therapy in a way, is that
Oh, sure.
decades ago, you had these researchers that looked at parenting styles and the way that teachers would approach kids. And when it was so much based on you follow the rules or there's going to be consequences, there ended up being this resentment, right? There was this rigidity.
Right.
And so the world of psychology comes along and goes, hey, parents, hey, teachers, we need to build this whole system based on positive reinforcement. We need to validate, we need to encourage, we need to do that instead of punishing, and you get better results. So what they did is they studied this over decades, and they found that these young people growing up until they got to college, they followed them through the college age, and they found that the levels of basically narcissistic tendencies were significantly higher in this generation that came up through that type of an approach.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
And so one of the lessons was maybe we went a little bit too far with that, because now these young people feel really entitled and it's more me.
Well, I cannot tell you how, like, you can't go into a space where younger people are on the internet and not hear some thing about like how, you know, I'm not going to be some lowly janitor or a stock boy,
Right,
or I'm
right.
not going to be working in an office like all those drones. I'm going to be someone important. I'm going to change the world. And it's like, there are 8 billion people. There can't be 8 billion important people.
They all want to be influencers. That's what they
Yeah.
want to be.
Oh, God,
wants
yes.
to be-
Yeah.
Yeah, they all want to be very famous. They all want to be the person who fixes everything. And I mean, like, you know, that's been a college student thing forever, though. You know, you go 40 years back, you ask a college student what they're going to do, and they're going to be like, I'm going to be the first astronaut who was also president and also immortal. And it's like, okay, sure.
Right. So then now when you have young people who say, well, I'm not going to take that job, that's below me. What's the healthier way to look at it? To go, well, good for them because they're not settling?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Or is it like, come on, have some humility?
yeah, exactly. I think everyone's got to start somewhere. And it's like, it's also, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of jobs out there that, like, okay, so you get paid $300,000 to make a PowerPoint once a week for Google. I mean, I kind of respect janitors quite a bit more than that, because a janitor is a tough job and they do not get paid very much.
It's the trades, though, that are not going to go away. This is the interesting
Right.
thing, because we're in an era of AI, and a lot of jobs are very, very replaceable. But a lot of the trades, you're still going to need a plumber and an electrician, and you can make a great salary with that. And the fact that a lot of schools don't encourage the trades as much as they used to is a shame, because
One of my favorite stories.
That's also something that looked down upon. No one wants to be a plumber, because plumbers, you know, it's a dirty job. You got to clear out drains or work with sewage or whatever. And it's, you know, no, that's beneath me.
But now I'm noticing, so I have, you know, for my therapy clients, it runs the gamut. I have, you know, I have 15-year-old clients and I have 75-year-old clients. But one thing I've noticed over the last few years, I can think right now of at least 6 or 7 clients that were going into that college age or just hit like the college age, and they were trying to figure out what to do. And that was something that could take a year or two of therapy for them to explore what they want to do. But you know what they ultimately did is they did go that route. They went the route of going to school to become an electrician, for example.
Yeah.
I had a couple of clients who did that. And it was pretty cool to see that they jumped on that train and they've been thriving with it and they love it. But to your point, Kristyn, it's like, yeah, it takes a little bit of a rethinking on what direction to go with things right now. And that's definitely a way to go.
It's a great option. And I do think a lot of younger people are re-examining taking out the loans, taking out the $300,000 loans, because the way the economy is going, you're never going to pay off those loans, and you're going to be saddled with that. And then you can't have the house and the family and everything else that you think that you might want later on in your lifetime. And I think a lot of people are saying, you know what, I'm going to do a trade, or maybe I'm going to go to community college for 2 years and then transfer to get my bachelor's degree there. They're looking at it because for so long, there were no consequences. They're like, okay, I want to go to, we'll just use my school, NYU, which is easily $100,000 a year. You just sign on that piece of paper. You don't think that, you know, in 4 years, I'm going to have $100,000 loan times 4,
Right.
you know, waiting for me on the other end, because you have no concept of money at 18 the same way you do when you're in your 20s.
No. And those are the other clients. I have those clients too that go that direction. And then I'm with them when they have the excitement of they just graduated, and that feels amazing. And then you know what the next conversation is?
Is it where is the
It's time to
six-figure
pay my
job I
loan.
was promised?
It's that, and
Yeah.
it's time to pay
Yeah.
my loan. And then when I'm able to ask them and go, well, how much of a loan do you have? I mean, mind-boggling
Oh,
how much
God.
these. It's just
insane.
crazy. I mean, I can have somebody who's coming out with a $200,000 college loan, and they're not getting a job that's above an entry-level position.
Well, that was one
Because
of the
wages
things-
haven't kept up.
Correct.
That was one of the things that was hammered into me my entire childhood is that go to college and you're going to make tons of money. You just will. People who go to college, they make a lot of money. Go to college, you'll make a lot of money too. And that's not true. Depending on your degree,
Depends.
of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, depending on where you are, you know, you could become a PhD in engineering and still be broke depending on where you live and how many jobs are out there. But, you know, people treat college degrees like they're buying something for $200,000 that's worth $2 million.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
No, and I was fortunate because I had a good, so first of all, when I got out of high school, I didn't go to college right away. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to be that person. So I delivered pizzas for a couple of years, and then I saw Good Will Hunting, and then I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I found something I want to go to school for. But fortunately, I met a good mentor who was able to help me take a look at, because I was originally going to be a psychologist. I was going to go all the way through. And when I got done with my bachelor's, he sat down with me and he said, well, what do you want to do with this degree? And I said, I want to do therapy. And he said, okay, so you don't care about having the letters after your name? No. You're not going to do research or be a professor? No. He said, okay, well then financially, if you look at how much more it's going to cost you to get your doctorate and you're going to be a therapist, in the course of your career, it's not going to make enough of a difference to make that worth it. So go this path, get your master's degree in therapy. And so I went that way. And he said, then look at it this way: for the amount that it's going to cost you and you take out in loans, that's going to be investment that it might take you 2 decades to pay it off, whatever it might be. But in the long run, that investment is going to be worth it because of what you're going to be able to do with it. And then eventually you'll make enough back to make it so that it was cost effective. How many people have that mentor to sit down and say, let's
Right.
look at it this way?
Well, it's a different mentor, and I know Kristyn has to go, so it's a good place I can jump in here and tell you I got a different message than most people did. I got my first major market job at 1500 KSTP, working for the Hubbard. So I did. I started doing the weekends, the Jesus tapes on Sundays, and then I was on Saturday night. And then it moved to overnights, and then it was 10 to 2, and then it was 6 to 10, and all the rest of it. But what really made me, know my place. I will never forget this. I go to a friend of mine's house, nice Italian family. So, the father didn't have any problem telling you what he thought. And I walked in the house. I didn't even know he knew I was on the radio. I had no clue. I'd only been on for like a week. And I walk in, and I won't say his name, but I can see his face. As he's looking at me, I walk in, he goes, "Hey, Tommy, I heard you're like a disc jockey now." I said, yeah, sir. I got a job. Yeah, you're like 1500 KSTP, aren't you? That's a pretty big station, because it was like the number 2 station in the market at that time. And I said, yeah, he said, well, you must be a pretty big deal, you think, huh? And I said, no, I just started at the deal. He goes, well, I listened to you. You're horse shit. I will never forget that as long as I lived. And then he kind of looked over his shoulder. And I kind of realized it was like he was just keeping me in my place.
Mhm.
Don't think you're a big deal, kid. You're going to ruin your career if you think you're a big deal. So he taught me a lesson. And to this day, a few years later, I could still feel how that felt when he said, yeah, I listened to you. You're horse shit.
Every celebrity should have a aide who follows them around whispering, "Remember, you are mortal," into their ear.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Kristyn, another brilliant report, I thought. The women will be back with us. So you're not going to be on tomorrow, you said?
Won't be tomorrow. I will be back on Friday, though.
Okay, well, hopefully we can all gather and have a good time, but have a magnificent, well, you're taking the day off. You got other work to do.
I have other work. I have to be in the studio, and my call time's at 6:30 a.m. So
I've seen you in the studio. No, I wouldn't do that to you.
And
I've
good
known
to
you for
see
too
you.
long.
I don't know if you know, Kristyn, but last time I was here, you and your husband and I think your animals had your stuff packed and were waiting because the wildfires were
Yeah.
right
Yes.
at your doorstep.
Oh, there you
And I
go.
left,
yes,
oh my God, like, is she going to be okay? So apparently,
we did wind up evacuating. That's the thing. So I think I spoke to you guys on Friday morning. It was a Friday morning. I'm like, we're packed just in case. By 5 p.m., we got the get the heck out. And we were like in the cars and leaving. Our home, thank goodness, was okay. But it was just up the street, and incredible work by all of the firefighters, responders, the air team. And it was because of the air team and the lack of wind that our neighborhood was saved.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we'll talk to you on Friday then. We'll miss
See
you
y'all
tomorrow.
on Friday. I know I'll miss you guys too.
Yeah.
Thanks
Good
a
to
lot.
see you, Jesse.
You too.
We'll take a break. Be right back in a couple of minutes. Jesse, the shrink, in studio. We got psychology to talk about. We got humor to talk about. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about. As a matter of fact, we'll be right back right after this. Does thinking about retirement make you uncomfortable? Sometimes the anxiety for wondering if you saved enough can be overwhelming. But what if I told you that you could ease those tensions in just 48 minutes? My guy, Josh Arnold, Mr. Money Talk, can sit down with you and get you on the right track for your financial future. Josh has navigated it all when it comes to uncertain market and economic conditions, and he'll always provide straight talk. Never sugar-coated advice on how to reach the finish line with your retirement goals. Don't let your financial worries give you an ulcer or keep you from calling Josh right now. His 48-minute no-obligation consultation could be just what you need to feel better about your future. Call Josh today at 952-925-5608. Set up your free 48-minute no-obligation consultation. That's 952-925-5608. Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC Security Investment Advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments must involve risk. You know that. All comments and opinions of Josh Arnold's do not constitute investment advice. I am a paid endorser. Let me tell you about my bank. That'd be North American Banking Company. When it comes to banking, it's all about trust, and that's what you get with them. They've been around since 1998. They've always made it clear they're here to give you a better banking experience with a focus on the local community, and you won't be dealing with some AI chatbot. You'll get straight answers and quick decisions from real people that know you. That's the very important thing, by the way. They know you and your situation. They're always ready to help. So if you're tired of the big national banks and want something better, stop by and see my friends at North American Banking Company. Visit nabankco.com to learn more. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Ladies and gentlemen, today's show brought to you by Mr. Money Talk, Josh Arnold. Call Josh today for your free 48-minute evaluation at 952-925-5608. Jesse, the shrink, in studio. So how's the balance now between shrinkage and comedy?
Shrinkage? Shrinkery?
The shrinkage
Shrinkery.
is good. The balance is it's something, Tom. It's a lot of fun, and I'm loving it. It's overwhelming at times, and easier than I can keep up with, but it's in a fantastic way. So yeah, lots of comedy shows I've been doing, and lots of therapy I've been doing.
How do you avoid? Because I would have a tough time with this. If I'm a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever the situation is, psychologist, and I'm doing comedy, do you have to be very careful not to mention things that happen in psychology sessions with clients? Because there's got to be some good material there. I know that.
Oh, do I have to be careful to not bring that to the comedy shows?
Yes, exactly right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you're bound by HIPAA, I'm assuming.
Well, that's I should be careful. No, of course. Yes, of course I have to stick with HIPAA.
Right.
No, yeah, Tom, absolutely. Sometimes I can bring stuff to the stage that happens in therapy sessions, but I'm going to have to be obviously I'm going to have to leave identities of people out and not get too specific on things.
Sure.
Whether it's a concept that comes up in a session that I think is hilarious, or the way that comedy can work is you can take, I can have 4 different things that happen in 4 different therapy sessions, and I can combine that into one story with a fictional anonymous person, if you will. So, but you always have to be on your game and making sure that you're being HIPAA compliant, of course.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the reason I even brought it up is because it's got to be a little difficult, because I had a friend, he's unfortunately no longer with us, but he was a psychologist. So I would go visit him once. Matter of fact, I met him by going to see him at first, and then he and I became friends. And as I said, unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but I will never forget. And I literally was told by him to not do that. He said, when you're here, I know you're doing your radio show and all the rest of it, but you really can't talk about, you can talk about yourself if you want. That's your business. And one of the things that really pops into my head, and I've mentioned this before on the show, I'm talking to him and his client is late, so we're just sitting there, the doors closed, and we're just sitting there talking, and the guy didn't show up and didn't show up and didn't show up. I'm there for like 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes talking to my friend. And I said, well, it doesn't look like your client's coming. So then I got to go. So I'll just talk to you later. I open the door. There's a guy standing at the door in a karate pose. And I asked the janitor, and he said he had been there the whole half hour standing in a karate pose. Now, I don't know. All these years later, I can talk about it on the show.
Right.
I don't know how I didn't talk about that on 1500 KSTP. I will tell you that, honest to God, because it was the guy knew that he had to be defensive, apparently, or he felt I'm going to reveal a lot of things to somebody, so I better be defensive as well. And the defensive part completely took over his brain. I mean, he did not realize what he was actually doing, standing stock still for a half an hour in a karate pose, just to let everybody else, I am going to defend myself.
They call it fight, flight, or freeze. But in rare instances, it's fight, flight, and freeze.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Complete amygdala hijacking.
Yep.
Oh, my God. But yeah, I mean, and I'm not even going to ask you if you've ever been through things like that, because I'm certain that you get some odd behavior, I would imagine.
Yeah, I've had plenty of, I don't know how this is possible, Tom, but in September it'll be 20 years since my first therapy session.
20 years, my God.
That is a lot of therapy sessions, a lot of experiences. So I've had my own versions of what you witnessed on that day.
Absolutely. And you and I have talked about this before too. I have another friend. Renee is a good friend of mine. He's been a psychologist for many, many years. Just a really brilliant guy, nice guy, and all the rest of it. And I'd come in there, and there'd be women sitting in the waiting room going to see. And every time I noticed when they got up to go in, they would hike their skirt up. And I was that for distraction? Why would they do that? It wasn't like they'd bare everything, but they'd hike it up about 3-4 inches.
Yep. It's a very subtle thing. Those are the types of things that I'm fascinated observing.
Yes.
People doing, you pick up on that. You see those kinds of things. Sometimes people don't pick up on that, but it's fun to just see those little things where you go, I noticed that. I saw what they did. Right? And do they even know that they did it? And most of the time,
yes.
You probably know, but sometimes
that's a very good point.
Transference somehow.
Well, trying to impress somebody how wonderful you are, I guess, maybe.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know what that is.
A lot of people develop feelings for their psychiatrist over time.
So they do.
Wonder if they're being like, oh, well, if I just hike it up a little bit, maybe he'll like me more or something like that. Subconsciously, probably.
And that's where I go to the subconscious. I mean, that's also, whether it's a therapist or it's somebody else, if you tune in and you watch people's behaviors like that, whether it's a little thing with the hair or it's hiking the skirt. I mean, there's things that we do as humans that's almost on the instinctual level and you don't even notice that you're doing it.
So when I go to the doctor, I'm always lifting weights.
Yes, he's doing good curls.
Look how strong I am, doctor.
There's no question about it. Today's show brought to you by Mr. Money Talk, Josh Arnold. Call Josh today for your free 48-minute evaluation at 952-925-5608. So as a therapist and a comedian, you obviously have borders that you don't cross either in a session or on the stage. You got to look at it both ways, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I probably mentioned to you before, it's really interesting when the worlds collide or come together.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of experiences where I've been on stage and I've looked in the front row and there's a therapy client of mine right there.
Oh, yeah.
I had one time when I was doing a show and I looked stage left and there's the owner of the clinic that I work for. And I remember I had just said to the audience, I'm a comedian and therapist. And I looked and I saw my boss and I was like, all right, well, depending on how this goes, I might just be a comedian by the end of it.
Well, see, you used it.
I'm just going to have to commit to the bit and do this. Unfortunately, it was a sigh of relief at the end of the show. He was impressed and he said he wanted to sponsor a comedy show. So I was like, okay, whew, that worked out okay.
But isn't it wonderful that you can do that? Because a lot of people probably could not do that.
Yes. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And I've told you this before, Tom. I like the way that the worlds can blend together because one of the great joys I get in doing the comedy stuff is I produce all these shows now in addition to performing in them. And so what's fun is, in fact, I don't know if you know about this, but I did a Jesse the Shrink's midlife crisis show a few months ago at the Parkway Theater.
Oh,
and you know who Jeff Ozer is, right?
Absolutely.
So I had him headline it, but I did it in a group therapy session format. So we had 5 therapy chairs on stage And I was able to do this experiment, and it worked out so well, where it was a blend of, here's us sitting together in a group format and me talking about this midlife stage of life and how crazy it is and how interesting it is and how humorous it is.
Mhm.
And I'm bringing the crowd into it. And then I'm saying to each comedian, now your therapy assignment is to walk up to that microphone and talk to the audience and do your performance, and to bring all of that together. And at the end of the night, have them sit back down and we process with the audience and the comedians. How was it? And it was absolutely wonderful. It was kind of therapeutic, but the laughter also brought out, you know, this joy in people and this connection. And it's amazing to see how they can combine, but I also have to be very careful about keeping them distinct in certain ways.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
It cannot be that easy. Is my favorite restaurant in the world still right next door to the Parkway?
Yes, and I was with, and I don't know if you know who all these people are, but Jimmy Davis is one of my friends who was in that show too, and he's St. Paul. He's been doing stand-up since the 90s. He had a comedy club there back in the day, but he was part of the show when we walked next door. So Tom, what was it called back in the day?
Oh God, I can't even remember.
You had said last time I was here, and I can't.
Yes,
remember.
right. I can't
You
remember
asked me
today.
about it, and so now it's a different name.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Parkway had it where we could go there before the show, and they paid for us to have dinner together there.
Wonderful.
And when we went, Jimmy's eyes lit up, and he said the name of the place it used to be that you had asked me if it's still there. And he said back in the day, the comedians would always go over there.
Always.
Shows. So now it's a different place, but it's the same space. And
It was a Mexican restaurant, I think, when it first
see, I want to say Pepitos, but am I making that up?
It might be Pepitos. You might be right about that.
I'm thinking.
Andy, would you see if there was a Pepito?
What is it, Zapata or whatever?
Zapata was another one.
Or was that's a different one?
I don't know if it is or not. It might have been
Terrible
Pepitos and then Zapata. I don't know.
Pepitos, let's see, closed in 2017, 4820 Chicago Avenue.
That's it, I bet. Yeah,
That's it.
it's on Parkway's on Chicago there. I think that's it.
God,
Yep, next door to the Parkway Theater. Yep.
So that was Pepito.
Pepitos.
And what did it become after that?
Let's see. Let's look up 4820 Chicago Avenue on Google Maps.
God, I loved that place, Pepito. And the people who ran it were the nicest people on earth. You'd go in there. I heard the show again tonight, Tom. That was good. You did a good job. They were always very, very nice. Really nice people.
Yeah, whoever was there is now too. Well, he's looking that up. It's killing me, Tom, that before I came in today, I've analyzed you and something you always say, and I couldn't think of it this morning on the way here, and you now just said it twice, and it's escaped me again. It's a common thing that you say, and I don't know if you know this. I don't think I shared this. First time I came on your show, this whole format was new to me.
Mhm.
And so I later went back and I watched it, and I noticed what was funny is, as a therapist, I tend to sit in silence after somebody says something. That's what I'm trained to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
Because
That's
in
true.
session, if somebody says something, if I jump in too quick, I might miss something. So if I just sit there, sometimes all of a sudden they'll say something and it's a breakthrough. So I went back and watched. First time I came on here, I did that to you. And I would see you automatically fill that gap in. I thought, oh, being on the air, I probably shouldn't sit in silence. But you have a go-to, Tom, that's your filler in those moments. And you said it like 5 times my first episode, and you've said it now twice today. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll point it out next time it happens. I can't get it in my head, but you have a certain thing that you say, and it's that little filler.
Really?
He has many of those.
Okay.
Is it, boy, look at the time?
No, it's not that. It's way more subtle. You're way more of a pro than.
Oh, it's more subtle. Let's go. Anyway, was that? No, it's not. That's not it either.
No, I'll tell you what. It'll happen naturally, and then
We'll keep our eyes open.
Yeah.
We'll keep our eyes
Talking
open.
in the
for it.
chat about all of our degrees and whether we're using them or not.
Ooh.
Seems like about half of people are not.
And people on the chat?
Yep.
They don't use their degree.
No, some of them do, some of them don't. But
I suppose.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's ever a good idea to buy something for $200,000 you're never going to use. I mean, that's basically like
Yeah.
buying a house and just never setting foot in it,
Right.
if you think about it. So I don't know.
Yeah. You buy it, and then you just kind of go, yeah,
I
well,
don't need
maybe
this.
eventually I'll get to it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what's great about that is there's always been a connection. Again, I suppose because of my father, the psychological problems, all the rest of it. But going out to like Hazelden and doing, because they have these days out there. You go out there and say hello to all the people, all the rest of it, and they put on some clinics, and then they put on some shows out there once in a while. You go see. I just think it's such a. They intentionally must make that a very comfortable place for people. Do all psychiatric hospitals do that? Try to make it as comfortable as they can.
Well, that's not my specialty, so I can't say
No,
for sure. But
no, I understand.
having clients that have gone to them, I would say the answer has to be no.
Really?
It's going to be like other things. You're probably going to have. Here's an educated guess. You're probably going to have Hazelden. You're going to have places that cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Probably that's where you're going to be more prone to have that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think if you're talking about a place where, they're ordering you to go there and you don't have any choice, you're going to have facilities, I think, that are going to be a lot more cold feeling. It's going to be rigid and it's not going to have all of that. So it's going to be a mixed bag.
Yeah. I mean, because like I said, when they took my father away, he was literally behind bars the next time I saw him. They put him in a little caged in area.
Wow.
Because I guess he got very violent, apparently. I don't know what the whole situation was, but I have always enjoyed that kind of thing. You look and, first of all, where did it start? Where was the very first psychiatric hospital? Was it in England or someplace like that?
I mean, I
Germany,
think it was
maybe?
probably like Cave 73.
Yeah, you might be right about
all
that.
cavemen lived, but it depends on what your definition of psychiatry is, I suppose. Or
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. But I mean, you hear so many great stories about these places and people are, institutionalized and all the rest of it. I heard the story many, many times about a guy just could not stand to be there anymore. And he got outside and he was running away. And unfortunately, his pajama pants fell down and tripped him and he fell over. And he had to come back because his knees were bleeding. It's like, is there no God? That's what I have to say about that one.
And, I can think I've had a few clients that maybe have gone to places that are kind of like that. And it's kind of interesting that the ones that are coming to my mind, it wasn't even going to those places necessarily what they offered that helped. It was them going there and seeing the environment and taking in what it was like. And they were like, oh my God, I don't ever want to have to come back here.
Yeah.
And, that's not going to be the case for everybody, but for some people, they go in there and they see what it's like. And that's enough to be
that's what prisons were all about back in the. I mean, they were basically designed so you wouldn't want to come back there.
Right. Have you ever? I can't think of where this is, but my brother and his girlfriend went and did a tour somewhere, and because I remember he sent me photos, and it was showing displays of like apparatuses and things that they used to use.
Right.
Now you look and you go, oh my God, they let them do that to people.
I know.
I mean, imagine being in the experimentation phase.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of debatably still are, but it's just not nearly as brutal. I remember learning about lobotomies was one of those key moments in my life where I was like, humanity isn't as great as I thought it might have been.
Was that by chance One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
No, I actually have never seen that.
Oh, you haven't?
Oh, you haven't? That's a great movie.
Forget that I just said that.
I mean, I'm aware of it. I know every plot point because it's so famous, but
forget that.
No, I mean, it's just one of those things you learn about in school or whatever. And it's like, wow, they just randomly swirled this pick around in their frontal lobe and then hope for the best.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I kind of feel like if I had the choice between a frontal lobotomy or just float me out to sea, I think I'd probably take my chances with the ocean.
Well, now you got me thinking about two things. One is you made a comment about, in a way, we do a version of that now. I think that's interesting because I do that. I think ahead to 30 years from now, 40 years from now.
Oh, yeah.
When we look at the practices today, what are we going to think? Because I think we kind of continue to have that. Like I remember learning that they had Abraham Lincoln drink mercury to treat whatever one of his conditions was.
Oh.
George Washington, I think he had leech treatment for, he just his humors were unbalanced or whatever the hell they said back then. And presidents were getting these things that today it's might as well just kill them because that's what you did.
Yeah, and I can foresee, although I don't know for sure what it'll look like in the future, but I can see in the future, look at how we do medications now for
that's what
mental health.
Basically what I was thinking of. Thorazine and that sort of thing. It's just it works, but the side effects are so bad. There's a reason that what's the word I'm thinking of where they don't take it anymore. I can't think of it, but there's a reason so many people they stop taking their prescriptions because they're like, okay, the visions are going to come back, but at least I'm not sleeping 18 hours a day. And
at least I'm not sleeping 18 hours. At least I'm not gaining 60 pounds.
Yeah. Staring at the wall, the other 6.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not feeling like a zombie with just no emotion. So I can see in the future that maybe they can go, well, I don't know what it'll be, but let's take a blood sample and then we're going to engineer a specific thing that hits right at what you need. I don't know what it's going to be, but now the idea of going, here, try this, and then do it for a month and then come back and tell us how bad are the side effects, if there are any side effects. I think that we're going to someday look back at that and just go, wow.
I think so.
But then that also brings me back to, what do we think about, let's zoom out and let's look at like 100-year period of time. Do we look back and say it was worth it to do some of those experiments, whether that's going back to lobotomies or our current medications? Do we look back eventually and go, well, we had to put people through those things in order for us to get to the place where we have the most effective treatments?
You're getting into borderline trolley problem territory there.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I think so. Even I'm only 38 years old, and in my life, the treatment of certain diseases, especially cancer, it's night and day. You know, 30 years ago, you had most cancers. It's like, okay, well, I guess 6 months from now, you won't be around anymore. And now half of them are borderline treatable, and the other half, they can put you in remission for 10 years.
Yeah.
So, but chemo is one of the most brutal things you can go through.
I think that's a great example. I mean, I've been reading up on the, they take these, the vaccines for, what do they call, what's the acronym on these vaccines for COVID?
MMR. Wait, not MMR.
That's not quite
not
it.
right.
mRNA?
Yes, mRNA. That's
mRNA. So it's been fascinating. I don't know if you guys have read, but basically the people that were researching those types of vaccines were doing the research for things like cancer, because they were finding a lot of hope on this might actually be able to make it so we're going to have these cancer vaccines, but they didn't have a whole lot of research funding to go into it. And then COVID came along and the government said, we need funding right now to be able to get a vaccine. And so that allowed them to show that this technology can work. And so now they got all this extra funding to go towards things like cancer. So I'm very curious if they're accurate on their predictions. I mean, we might be on the verge of 5-10 years from now having these vaccines for cancer. Can you imagine how mindful that would be as a society if we had that?
One thing that's really interesting about that whole situation, and I'd like to get your take on this, Jesse and Andy, when people go through treatment for alcoholism, they call, I don't know who reaches out to you. I can't even remember because it's been so many years now. But I went to AA for a while. I stopped drinking about 14 years ago, something like that. And I went to AA for a while. And it's not that I didn't like it. It just, I didn't really need it. I realized that I just wasn't going to drink anymore, and I didn't care, all that whole deal. But I had been through like visiting AA to support a friend, things like that. And what's so amazing about AA is still it's a very big thing still, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people go to Alcoholics Anonymous. It works really well for a lot of people. Like I said, I didn't stop going because it didn't work. I just didn't need it. I haven't had a drink now, and is it 14 years, Andy? 15?
Yeah, it's 14-ish. It was shortly before the podcast started, I believe. So that would have been 13, 14, 15, something around there.
But the psychology of it all, and that's why I bring it up, Jesse, is it's an amazing circle to sit in, watching people who wanted to stop drinking because they started drinking because their love of their life abandoned them and they just couldn't deal with it, so they started drinking too much and they didn't want to drink anymore. But my favorite, there was this one guy, and I was supporting a friend of mine, showing up and saying, hey, it's working really well and all the rest of it. But the first day, one guy kind of mumbled a little bit, didn't really say much. Then the second week I went back and he talked a little bit more. Third week, he didn't say anything. And you could tell he was kind of nervous. And the fourth week, I will never forget, they go around the circle and everybody's doing their deal. And they get to him. And he said, and he was very sincere about this, he was not trying to be funny at all. He said, you people will, and he kind of had this tremble in his voice, like he was about to start crying. You people just don't understand something. I love being a drunk. And he was serious. He was not kidding. And I thought, what is this? One flew over the cuckoo's nest.
No one becomes a drunk because they don't enjoy it.
Right. Well, that's true. Yeah.
It's a difference between becoming and staying. There's always the honeymoon period. Even things like, fentanyl addiction, there's that honeymoon period at the beginning. It might be very short, But there's a period where you're like, oh, I feel great all the time. And then,
Yeah.
three months later, you're, sitting in a corner and just waiting for the next fix.
Well, and that brings, they always talk about rock bottom. So, Tom, I think about this guy right there. He said, I love being a drunk.
Yeah.
You totally might love being a drunk, but the math and history and all that says that at some point, no matter how much you love being a drunk, you're going to lose your job, or you're going to lose your family, or you're going to lose your house. And that is a lot of times when the people then end up showing up at the AA meetings. You may have loved being a drunk. You may right now love it, but you are going to lose everything if you don't get your stuff together.
Obviously, I can't mention who it is, but one of the people that was in some of those meetings was a very big rock star. I mean, big, very big time. Everybody knows him. He was very, very successful, and it didn't work for him. And he died. I mean, it was a very sad situation that it just didn't connect with him. He didn't reach out a lot. He kind of kept everything inside. He didn't come forward with much, which I kind of wish he would have, because it probably would have helped him, right? If he had been more open.
Right.
But I remember sitting in those meetings, and he was in there. He was a very nice guy, very nervous about it, because I suppose he was very, like I said, everybody knew who he was. It wasn't like he was going to hide from anyone. But he, I guess he tried it a few times, because he would come and go and come and go and come and go, and finally he just died. So you look at a situation like that and realize this guy had it all. He had fame, he had money, he was a handsome guy, he was very, very talented, but alcohol killed him. He just could not give it up. Yeah, it's really sad when you look at it that way.
It's the great equalizer, and it is fascinating psychologically, because and I suppose there's a debate to a degree, but I'll just say that for me, I fully buy into the idea that when that's happening, you have a very strong physiological component. In AA, they'll talk about the people who to that level, and it sounds like, Tom, this wasn't the case with you, but some people, it's more like their brain has an allergy to alcohol, where it's gonna say, give it to me, and then it can't stop. But it's fascinating psychologically, because even if you get into, I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with this, but the addicted brain, you have that physiological component, but you also have the conscious brain that is always, its job is to interpret our actions, our thoughts, and our feelings. So the addict that goes, well, I'm drinking because I want to celebrate, or I'm drinking because I had a stressful day.
Rationalizations.
And to just see how the brain is so complex that part of it is convinced this is the case, but physiologically over here might be the case. And now the struggle of that human being to try to sort through that and to integrate that, and to not be the rock star who has everything, that's the end, because they can't ever. So like when you said, somebody says, I love being a drunk. Okay, well, you might love being a drunk, and again, there's a lot of theories, but when you say that, I'm thinking there's a lot of stuff that's suppressed in this person. Not being acknowledged. And I remember I was fortunate growing up with a dad who actually worked in kind of one of these type of institutions that we were talking about earlier. And a lot of that was substance abuse based. And I remember when I was coming up, he told me, he said, when somebody has issues that have not been resolved, have not been addressed, and they learn to cover that up with a substance, what that's now doing is that's keeping all those issues suppressed, and it's keeping it so that they're not looking at those. And until that person is off of those substances and has a clear mind and the humility and the courage to be able to then let that stuff come to the surface and be able to work through it with somebody that knows how to help them work through it, then they can find that healing. But if they hold on to that thing of, I love being a drunk. Okay. But if that's going to keep being suppressed, then there's a good chance that's going to be the end of you,
We have to take a quick break, but we can come back. We got about 10 minutes left in the show, and I'd like to keep that conversation going, because I think a lot of people don't hear this kind of talk. There are not a lot of people that are willing to talk about either being through it, or having treated people who've been through it, or having relatives that have been through it. I find this conversation fascinating. I really do.
How many people are listening, to this that we know?
Yeah.
Either they're relating, or they know that uncle or that aunt or that grandma, or.
Well, we're now talking about alcoholism in the chat. So there you go.
Well, there you go. We'll be right back in a
I
couple.
swear to God, half of our audience is former drinkers.
Well, that's a possibility. That is a possibility. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes and continue the conversation for at least 10 more minutes, maybe even longer. It's a great conversation. You're listening to me. Your customers are listening to me, and they will hear me promote your business. Here's the deal. Tom Bernard Podcast attracts thousands of listeners who are loyal. And by the way, that audience keeps building. So thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you for that, because the audience builds more every week. They're loyal. They're engaged, ready to support businesses they trust. Our podcast has helped numerous businesses increase traffic, sales, and brand recognition. We're not just about ads. We're about results. And that's very true. Whether you're a local business or a national brand, we offer custom advertising packages designed to fit your unique needs and goals. Our audience spans multiple demographics, allowing you to target your ideal customers with precision, from millennials to baby boomers and everyone in between. With the broad reach we have on the show and passionate following, your business will see increased visibility and awareness, which is very important, translating into more customers and sales. Just visit tombernardshow.com. All you have to do is visit tombernardshow.com, click on the partner tab. Let's discuss how we can work together to grow your business. Thank you.
The past several years have been the craziest in the history of the car business. The pandemic, supply chain and chip issues, all causing extreme inventory shortages that led to, well, predatory pricing. Some dealers charge thousands of dollars over MSRP.
We never played that game. I'm Jim Paul of Valley Buick GMC. We knew that would leave a bad taste in a customer's mouth. More importantly, from an integrity standpoint, it was just wrong.
So what about the current market? You know, inventory and pricing.
Valley has their best inventory in years. Really all the Buick and GMC models. Even the previously hard-to-find Yukons, HD pickups, and Hummer EVs. Plenty of deep discounts. Many with factory rebates and low-interest financing.
Then it's a good time to buy?
It's a great time. We're welcoming our previous customers back, as well as anyone else that felt the treatment just didn't feel right the last time somewhere else.
Valley Buick GMC in Apple Valley and Hastings, or valleycardealers.com. Car buying without the bad aftertaste.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama papa coming for you.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Andy's here. Catherine and Alex had business they had to take care of. Jesse the Shrink, our very special in-studio guest. I love it when you come in because you can talk about humor, you can talk about entertainment, you can talk about psychology, all these different things. And one thing I wanted to mention coming out of this final break here was when I did go to see, I never went into inpatient treatment. I just kind of went to meetings and stuff like that. There used to be a place on, where was that, on Nicollet Avenue, Andy, in South Minneapolis. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was somewhere in that situation.
A long time ago, I don't remember.
And I do remember I went to my very first day of that. It was not inpatient; it was outpatient. You just went and talked to them. Some of the guys, I guess, were inpatient, but I never was. But I do remember I went to my first session. It was a great place. I wish I could remember the name of it. I'll probably have to dig it up, but it's not around anymore, unfortunately. But we went to dinner. It was a holiday of some kind or whatever. And I studied wine for years. Used to have a huge wine collection, which, by the way, benefited a lot of people because I gave it all away to help other people, solve some of their problems, I guess. But I do remember that first night we went out to dinner. It was Andy and Alex and Catherine and me. We went to Ocean Air and we sat down and I grabbed the wine list. And Catherine said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I just thought I'd order some wine for you guys." She goes, "Is that a good idea to sit here and watch us drinking wine?" I said, "Yeah, what you do was never about what I did. It wasn't like, oh, you get to drink and I don't. It was never like that." Was I very fortunate in the fact that on the very first day of treatment for it, it didn't bother me at all to see my wife and children have some wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that unusual?
Well, I mean, if I go back to kind of how you described it, it doesn't sound like, and I'm not saying this, by the way, as a substance abuse specialist, I should just make sure to say that. But, you know, Tom, when you gave me the example of you, to me, what it strikes me as is it doesn't sound like you had that brain allergy. It doesn't sound
No,
like you had, you know.
right.
So I think that makes a
Right.
difference too, because I
It
think
does.
day one you have somebody that does have that, and they do have the physiological dependence. Granted, I can't speak for everybody.
Right.
I would say that's pretty exceptional for that person to be in that environment and them to be okay with that. Now, can they eventually be okay with that? Absolutely. 100%.
Sure.
I see that all
Right.
the time.
Right.
But I would imagine that would be really rough for you if you would have fit into the other category.
Yeah, that would have been, and it didn't bother me. Andy, you remember that night, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't bother me at all that you guys were drinking some good wine. It was really good. I bought a really nice bottle of wine for him, so it was really good stuff too.
And that's a relatable thing. I bet, like Andy, you're talking about people on the chat here. A lot of people can relate with the idea of they have a loved one who's struggling with addiction, with alcoholism, and now they're not drinking. What do we do in front of them? You know, it's the holidays, it's the family get together. Some people will make sure they have no alcohol around, and now that makes the former drinker uncomfortable. They don't want don't. They're just like, that's the worst thing you can do. Now I feel like I'm just being a downer to everybody. But that's a very relatable thing. I guarantee there's a lot of listeners out there that are in that position to go, yeah, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to not? Are we supposed to ask them? Are we supposed to just carry on like we normally would?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's part of it. Catherine and I have been together for 45 years. We've been married for 40. It'll be 41 years coming up real soon. And that was too much of a loss for me. We had a son, we had a daughter. We were doing, had a wonderful family, all the rest of it. So that was a big, and Catherine never threatened to leave me or any of that kind of stuff. She would be very direct about, Tom, you're drinking too much lately. You should think about that and whatever. She was, but when I look back in the fact that if I ever put my marriage to her in jeopardy or my family in jeopardy, I would not have been able to handle that. There's just no way. When it became very apparent that I should stop drinking, then I stopped drinking, And
go ahead.
No, I had a lot of help from friends and family members and all the rest of it. So I didn't do it alone. If people think you have to do it alone, you do not have to do it alone. No, you do not. That's true.
And I was just say, if you had that brain allergy, I think because of the way that distorts people's thinking. Yeah. You're able to say, I'm not going to let it affect my family life. And if it is, I'm done.
Right.
That's where that distortion starts to happen for a lot of people, is that they can't, that part of their brain takes over and they can't, they're like, oh no, it's not actually going to take away my family. It's going to be okay. And you made me think, I was going to mention one other thing. What's interesting in therapy is how many times I've had it happen that I can have a client I'll make up a period of time, but I can have a client for a year or two and they're opening up to me about everything.
Yeah.
Everything, the most vulnerable of things, but you know what they're not letting me in on is the drinking.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I will, and it really is, right? Because why can you open up about what's going on with your marriage, with your kids, with your job, with your depression, with all of this stuff? And it's happened multiple times where I can get a year or two into therapy, and then all of a sudden, here's the disclosure that this whole time this has been going on. They've chosen to leave that part out.
That's fascinating. Another thing, and I know we only got a few more minutes because you have a real life too, but I have had some friends. I've lost some friends to alcoholism and drug addiction. There's no question about that. And I look back on it now, and I had stopped years and years before them, and then I would go see them. Having heard that they weren't doing well or any of that stuff, that was hard to do because. And you feel a little guilty in a way, Jesse. It's like it was way too easy for me to stop drinking. And it obviously is not easy for these people.
Right.
And it makes you kind of feel bad. It's like, well, I stopped drinking, but it wasn't like some great struggle. I stopped drinking. That's what happened.
Yeah. And I think that's like really fascinating, just all of that right there. Because whether you feel, you might feel guilt or you might not, like I think that if you're being humble about it, there might be a feeling of guilt or something associated with that. But then there's also the other side of it where for some people like you, where it's that easy, they have a hard time empathizing with the alcoholic who can't quit.
Yeah, see, and I
Right?
don't.
It's that
I'm not-
mindset of,
Yeah.
well, I was able to quit, so you have no excuses. You should be able to quit too. And that's a very common place to get with people right
Yeah.
there. That's
Yep.
a real tough one, because how do you both empathize and go, well, it must be more difficult for them. Yeah, it's
A
fascinating.
big part of that for me, Jesse, was Catherine never, ever stopped telling me she loved me. When I was going through it, when I stopped doing it, now Catherine and I hug and kiss every morning and every night. It's not something we planned out. It's just something we do. So the support I got from Alex and Andy and Catherine, and it wasn't ever pissing and moaning and bitching about it. They just said, hey, you stopped, and it's great and all the rest. There are still things I do that annoy the hell out of Catherine. Don't get me wrong.
Of course.
There's still a lot of stuff left she doesn't like, but that's not one of them.
But she puts up with it in a sober state of mind, and so God bless her for that, Tom. I can only imagine.
No question about it. And I think it's good for me, having had the highest rated morning show in the country. You could get really carried away with your ego with things like that. And look how big a deal I am and all the rest of it. She was a huge part of me not getting involved in that stuff either. It's like, it's a radio show. Calm down.
Yeah.
She was always really, really great about that. Absolutely.
I also just thought real quick, and I don't know what we're at with time, but real quick, I think it's really kind of a cool thing that right now it's like a trending thing for people to not be drinking or to be drinking. And if you look at, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but like liquor stores, bars, restaurants right now, there's been an explosion of NA beers. The big beer companies. And, from what I've read, a lot of that comes from how many people during the pandemic lockdown found themselves down that path of drinking too much, and they come out of it going, oh my God, this is a problem. So at least there's a encouraging trend. And I just wanted to kind of plant the seed and throw it out there, since we do have people listening that on this topic, if there's anybody else listening and they're resonating with this and on some level going, like this is their struggle, whether it's going to an AA meeting, whether it's reaching out to a therapist. As a therapist, it's not my specialty, but I've had enough clients. It's like I was just saying, I can have somebody who talks to me for a year or two, and then finally it comes up. I mean, even if it's that and you need that to start, it doesn't mean you see a therapist and you're going to end up being sent away to treatment. Just find somebody you can at least start to talk to a little bit, and maybe eventually you can start to get down a path of whatever help you might need, whatever that is. Maybe you can just do it talking to a therapist, or eventually it leads to something else. But
I will say this as well. At this point in my life, I have some friends that I have known since I was in first grade, kindergarten in a couple of cases and all the rest of it. I've lost a lot of friends over the years and all the rest. But I got to tell you, of all of us that I went to school with through the years, most of them don't drink anymore. They just gave it up either years ago or whatever. And there's some people that still have a glass of wine now and then, or have a beer while watching a baseball game or whatever. They do that whole deal. But most of my friends that are still alive do not drink. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I've encountered the same thing, I'm almost coming up my 30-year reunion, and the more people I've reconnected with from back in the day, they're not. The same thing with the comedy scene. I had it in my head, if I, when I got into the comedy scene, that would be people drinking all over. No, there's so many comedians who don't touch that stuff anymore.
Yeah, that's very
Joe in the chat. He said that 2/3 of the people in the place he was at for the first time he tried to quit are no longer alive because they relapsed.
That's very true.
Yeah.
If you're big time into it, you could die. Like I said, that very famous person, it made me very sad because he was a hell of a nice man, but he just couldn't. I suppose there's a hell of a lot of stress being a huge music star. There's a lot of stress involved in that as well. So
I would imagine, but even it being the great equalizer, when you said that, Andy, when you just said 2/3, it reminds me that I remember learning it's pretty much a predictable mathematical equation for most.
Yeah.
If they have the addiction, you step back and it's a mathematical equation. It starts to look for your finances are going to get in trouble. Your relationships are going to get in trouble. Your health's going to start getting in trouble, and it will end with death. you know.
Yeah, well, that's a good. I'm glad you were very, very upfront about that. You will die. I had a lot of friends that died from drinking too much or doing drugs too much or whatever.
Yep.
You can't do that every day and pound your brain like that.
No. And I've seen the people too, Tom. I've had people I've known, and I've seen them at the end, and you see what they look like, and it's like this is not the same person I knew all these years.
That's so. We're gonna have to have you back. We can laugh it up and then get real serious about things and try to help you. I love the fact that you come on the show and help people. Andy said the chat right now is just full of former drinkers. Is that true?
Yep.
Good. Yeah.
Quite a few of
and
them.
I appreciate that, Tom, because, you know, I'm still getting used to coming on this show, but now the last few times we've found ourselves getting into some of these conversations, and it's like, yep, I think this is what's good about, you know, you allowing me to be on here, is that we get to have these conversations, and I think they're really good for us to just have them. But it's so nice to know people are listening, and whether it starts up their own conversations or, you know, it does something for them. I think that's really great. And then I'm going to ask real quick too. I've got, if you don't mind, before I get off the show, if I can just mention a couple of shows I have coming up this week.
Absolutely. We got to get into that next time you're on. That'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm just going to mention real quick. I have, I'm producing 3 comedy shows this weekend. So just want to mention them real quick. I'll be at the Rum Row Tiki Bar in Chanhassen on Friday night.
Wonderful.
And then LTD Brewing in Hopkins on Saturday night. And then I'm putting on a 420 comedy show at Gambit Brewing in Lowertown, St. Paul on Sunday.
That's fantastic. And that's so great. You help people and you make people laugh, and there's a good balance there. There's a really, really good balance there, I think. Yeah. And by the way, I am on X. If you want to hop on X, it's just, you know, my name on there. If you want to leave messages and talk about this very thing, I have no problem talking with people about, you know, how they feel about drinking, if they don't want to drink anymore. I haven't thought about it, I got to be honest with you, in at least a decade. It's just not even part of my life anymore. And I still buy lots of wine for people. And like when I was with some friends last week and I found them a really good bottle of wine, all the rest of it, I don't have any problem doing that at all. But yeah, if you sometime want to chat on, I suppose some people don't want to chat on X because it's exposed to everybody. I get, but don't be worried about that either. Other people might learn from what you and I are talking about.
That's I love that one. I love the idea of, if somebody does that, that might make somebody else go, oh, it's okay for me to do that. And then you get this compounding effect. And now all of a sudden everybody's talking. So it's good.
And I can't be one of those guys to say, oh, it was a real struggle for me, because it never was. It was not a real struggle for me. But a lot of that had to do with Andy and Alex and Catherine. I did not ever want to think a moment that I would lose them. I couldn't even think about that. So, and they never threatened to leave me or any of that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm saying either. But it was just very important to me to understand it's not really working for them, so it shouldn't work for me either. The big part of it. Jesse, you got to come back more often. We'll talk about humor. We'll also talk about psychology, because it's so fascinating to me. And we do have to, at some point, Jesse, have you want to talk about the unbridled arrogance you see in public now. It's people will walk at you, and if you don't get out of the way, they will run right into you, forcing you to get out of the way. It's like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. What happened?
Social psychology, my favorite topic.
Okay, well, next time you come on, like, you know, next week or whatever you want to do it again.
We'll back here soon.
I would love to talk about that too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
I've got a couple quick things before we end the show.
Sure, yeah.
Paul just joined the show. He said he was listening to you 17 years ago when you said you were stopping drinking, and he followed suit and has been sober since then.
Hell,
Paul, congratulations.
17 years. That's a pretty good run.
That's wonderful.
That's awesome.
And the other thing is the new website, tombernardpodcast.com, same address as the old website. I've been working on it, and I have got a merch link up now. So if you're looking to buy hats, mugs, that sort of thing, go to the site, go over to the left, or if you're on the phone, it'll just be right at the top. Click on merch. That is our official merch store. So we can also get a link to the chat room or the apps, the RSS feeds, that sort of thing. So if you're looking to download the app or join us in the chat during the show, that would be an easy way to find the link too.
There you have it. I mean, that's a very, very good example of why I do this show, because some days it's all about humor. Some days it's being pissed off at the world. And then some days Paul calls in and says, yeah, he stopped drinking at the same time. And man, that you made my heart an entire size bigger today, Paul. Thank you so much. I love hearing that kind of thing because there were people that there were examples for me too. There's no question about that. So we're living a much better life and much happier life. And if you got a problem with it, there are people to reach out to it. Why don't we close with that? If somebody thinks maybe I should stop drinking, what do they do first, Jesse?
If somebody wants to stop drinking, well, they can do a number of things. They can just go ahead and admit that to somebody that they love and care about, who can actually hear that.
Yep.
I mean, that right there can be a huge step. Or,
I agree.
They can go to an AA meeting. In this day and age, you can pull up an app and it will tell you every AA meeting that is by you. And I guarantee you there's one within 5 to 10 minutes of you, unless you live in the middle of nowhere.
It's like Pokemon Go for alcoholism. You got to visit all of the meetings and collect the badges.
And I know AA is not for everybody, but doing something. So
I've heard mixed things about like announcing that you're going to stop drinking, because I know for a lot of people it makes them accountable, because people are going to be like, oh, well, I heard you're not drinking anymore and that sort of thing. But I've also heard that for some people it can kind of backfire. What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I do think it's not one size fits all. So if you're somebody who can go ahead and proclaim something like that and it helps you, then by all means do it. But yes, Andy, I see it go the other way. There's a lot of people that I would encourage to just keep that proclamation to yourself and show through your actions, because it definitely can create an interestingly opposite effect to proclaim to people what you're going to do. Whether that means all of a sudden now that feels like a burden, or it feels like something you're supposed to do, so you want to rebel against that.
Right.
Yeah. And then it feels really crappy when you say all of that and then you don't follow through with it. So actions, more than anything. So go to an AA meeting, tell somebody you love, reach out to a therapist, whatever you need to do. Just start with something, some kind of an acknowledgement.
Yep.
And you can't do it by yourself unless you're Tom, who's Superman.
Nah, I think there might have been a family involved in that.
I think so, yeah.
Across the board, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah.
I love this, and I will close with this. We had Jesse on today, talk some humor and have a little fun, and then the topic kind of shifted, and you went along with it, Jesse. I love having you on the show. You got to come back more often, no question about it.
We'll do. And there's your expression right there. No question about it. That's the one, Tom. You just said it 3 times in the last 2 minutes.
No question
about it. If you need a filler, that's what it is right there. There's no question about it.
All right. Well, thanks. Have a great day. And thanks. We'll have you on again soon, Jesse. And if you have any questions for Jesse, you could send them over and we'll forward them to him.
Love it. Absolutely.
Right. Have a good day. Bye.
All right.
See ya.
Every time I hear the same, reminds me how you talking my